The market was loud, filled with laughter, shouts, and cruel whispers. In the center of the square stood a raised wooden stage, lit by harsh white lights that made every scar and bruise shine brighter. On that stage stood an alien girl, her wrists locked with iron chains, her head bowed low. She was young, her skin a pale silver that shimmered faintly under the lights. Her dark hair fell across her face, hiding her eyes from the crowd. The merchants called her worthless. The bidders mocked her, and the onlookers jeered. They called her the debt slave, saying she was nothing more than payment for a family's failure. Debt in this world was cruel when a family could not pay. Their daughters or sons were taken, humiliated, and sold. This girl had once walked proudly through her village, but now she stood broken, shivering under the weight of shame. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the ground, but the iron chains held her in place. The auction master, a tall alien with sharp teeth and golden rings, shouted to the crowd. His voice carried across the market. "Here is a fine specimen, young, strong, and ready to serve. Her debts are high, but she is worth every credit. Who will start the bidding?" The crowd roared with laughter. Some raised their hands, some shouted insults. A group of alien men in the front called out numbers, each one higher than the last, but their voices carried no respect, only mockery. They joked about her weakness, her family's shame, and what they would do to her once she belonged to them. The girl trembled. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Each word, each laugh cut her deeper. She wished for death. She wished the stage would collapse beneath her feet, but nothing happened. Her shame only grew heavier. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. She thought no one would come to save her. Why would they? Who cared for a girl marked by debt and disgrace? To the crowd, she was not a person. She was property, an object, a thing. Then the bidding began. Voices rose, credits shouted. The price climbed, but all of it sounded far away to the girl. Her mind was numb, her spirit nearly gone. And then silence. It started at the edge of the crowd. A shadow stood there, tall, still, and quiet, unlike the others. He did not shout. He did not laugh. He simply watched. His eyes were sharp, his face calm. He wore simple clothes, dust on his boots, nothing that marked him as rich or powerful. A human. The crowd noticed him, and laughter erupted again. A human? Someone shouted, "What business does a human have here?" Another laughed. The bidders smirked, calling him poor, weak, and foolish. "Go back to your trash ships, wanderer," they mocked. The girl raised her eyes for the first time. Through her tangled hair, she saw him. He stood different from the rest. Not leaning forward like a hungry predator, not sneering like the bidders, but calm, steady. His eyes met hers, and for one breath she forgot her chains. The auction master smirked. "Do you bid, human? Do you dare?" The human raised his hand. Slowly, silently, the market froze. Some laughed, some cursed, but all turned to watch. A human bidding on a debt slave was unheard of. It was madness. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Why would he do this? Why would anyone? The bidders shouted again, raising the price, but each time the human lifted his hand. Steady, unwavering, he did not speak. He did not boast. He simply kept bidding, climbing higher. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some said he was insane. Some said he had no money. Some said he would be killed for wasting the auction's time. But the human did not stop. The girl felt her heart race faster. Was this hope? Or was it another cruel trick? At last, the auction master slammed his hand on the table. Sold. He shouted to the human fool. The crowd roared with laughter and anger. Some threw coins, some spat on the ground, some muttered dark threats. The girl's knees weakened. Her chains rattled as she nearly fell. She did not know if this was freedom or a new prison. She only knew one thing: her fate had just changed, and the human, silent as the night, stepped forward toward the stage. The noise of the market did not calm after the sale. Instead, it grew louder, rougher, filled with curses and mocking laughter. A human had dared to win a bid in a place where humans were treated as nothing. To the crowd, it was not just strange, it was an insult. The auction master sneered, his sharp teeth flashing. He waved his hand for the guards to release the girls. Chains. But he did not hide the disgust on his face. "Take her, human," he said, spitting the word like poison. "She is yours now. But you will regret this fool's bargain." The girl's hands trembled as the cold metal cuffs were unlocked. Her wrists burned where the iron had bitten into her skin. She could not lift her head. She dared not look at the crowd. Their laughter still rang in her ears. She wanted to sink into the earth and vanish, but then she felt different hands touching the chains. They were steady, careful, not cruel. The human himself leaned forward, removing the last lock. His fingers brushed her skin. Gentle, the first gentle touch she had felt in so long. Her breath caught, her heart beat fast. The crowd shouted insults. "Look at him, touching her like she is more than trash." One alien yelled, "Humans always play the savior until they starve." Another mocked, "He will sell her tomorrow for half the price." Someone laughed, but the human did not react. He did not answer them. He did not shout. He only stood tall, his eyes calm. As if their voices did not matter, he looked at the girl and spoke. Just once, his voice was low, steady. "You are free now." The words shocked her more than the chains falling away. Free. No one had said that word to her since the debt collectors took her from her home. She blinked, confused, trembling. Could he be lying? Could this be another cruel trick? The guards moved aside, muttering dark threats. Some even warned the human. "Debt does not vanish," Wanderer one said. "You will pay with more than credits." The human ignored them. He placed a worn cloak around the girl's shoulders, covering her torn clothes, shielding her from the stares of the crowd. It was such a small act, yet her eyes filled with tears. No one had tried to shield her in years. The auction master slammed his staff on the stage. "Enough," he barked. "The sale is over. Take your prize and leave before I charge you more." His voice was filled with anger, not because of the money, but because the human had stolen the crowd's pleasure. The human guided the girl down the steps. Each step felt heavy to her. Every eye in the market was on them. The shame clung to her like smoke. But something else burned inside her too, a spark she thought had died. Hope, but the crowd was not finished. Some bidders, furious at losing, followed. Their voices rose like a storm. "You cannot just take her." One shouted, "We will buy her back, double the price." Another yelled. The human stopped walking. He turned, his face still calm, but his eyes hard. He said nothing, yet the silence was louder than their shouts. His stare cut through them like a blade. For a moment, they hesitated. The girl stared at him in shock. He had not spoken, had not raised a weapon, but the crowd stepped back, as if they had seen something dangerous in his eyes, something they did not expect from a human. She whispered, barely able to speak. "Why? Why did you do this?" He looked at her, and his answer was simple. "Because no one deserves chains." Her throat closed, her tears burned. She wanted to believe him, but fear still held her heart. What if he was different now, but later became like the others? What if this was only another prison with a softer hand? The crowd still muttered. Some followed at a distance, whispering threats. The night outside the market was dark, and the alleys were dangerous. The girl glanced behind, her fear growing. But the human did not hurry. He walked with steady steps, as if no danger existed, as if he had walked this path many times before. Everywhere, whispers spread. The human bought a debt slave. He wastes his money. He will be hunted by morning. Some voices were mocking, some filled with anger, some filled with curiosity. The girl wrapped the cloak tighter around herself. She did not know where he would take her, or why, but one thing was certain: the night of shame had changed into something else, something she could not name yet. The silent bid was over, but its echoes spread through the streets for the first time in years. The girl felt the weight of her chains gone, but another weight pressed on her heart, the mystery of the human who had bought her freedom. And as they walked into the shadows of the city, she realized one truth that both frightened and warmed her. This was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The night air was cold, sharp with the smell of smoke and rust. The girl walked beside the human, her wrists still aching where the iron cuffs had cut deep into her skin. Even though the locks were gone, she could almost feel the weight of the chains, as if they had sunk into her bones. The market square faded behind them, but the sound of mocking voices still echoed in her head. Every step felt uncertain, as if the ground beneath her might give way. She pulled the cloak around her, tighter, afraid someone might snatch it away. Afraid someone might drag her back to the stage. The human said nothing. He walked with long, steady strides, his boots crunching softly against the stone path. He did not look back at the crowd, nor did he glance at her as if she were a burden. Instead, his eyes stayed forward, calm and focused. When they reached a quieter street, away from the roar of the market, he finally stopped. He turned to her, and for the first time since the chains were removed, she dared to lift her eyes too. His face, without a word. He crouched down and opened a small leather satchel at his side. Inside were simple tools, worn but clean. He took out a small flask of water, a cloth, and a small jar of salve. The girl's breath caught. She stepped back in fear. Her voice trembled. What are you doing?" His eyes softened, and he spoke in the same calm tone. "Your wrists," he said. "They're bleeding." Her hands shook as he gently reached for one wrist. For a heartbeat, she almost pulled away. Her life had taught her that every hand meant pain. Every touch meant control. But something in his face, steady, quiet, unthreatening, made her freeze. He cleaned the wounds slowly, careful not to hurt her more. The cool water stung at first, but then the salve soothed the burning cuts. His touch was not hurried, not cruel, just patient. Tears stung her eyes. She had forgotten what kindness felt like, she whispered, barely able to believe her own words. "Why? Why are you doing this?" He tied a strip of cloth around her wrist, firm but gentle, then looked at her. His answer was simple: "Because you needed it." The words struck her harder than any insult the crowd had thrown. She had been called worthless, shameful, trash, but never needed. For a long moment, silence filled the street. Only the faint hum of night insects broke the air. The girl looked down at her hands, now wrapped clean and warm. She could not stop the tears rolling down her silver cheeks. She whispered, her voice breaking. "Am I really free?" The human's gaze did not waver. "You are not property," he said. "Not to me, not to anyone." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, desperately, but fear whispered inside. Her mind reminding her of all the times hope had been crushed before. "But the debt," she murmured, "the enforcers. They will come. They always come." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Let them come," he said. "I will not give you back." Her heart raced. She stared at him, stunned. No one had ever spoken for her like that. No one had ever promised to stand against the enforcers in that moment. She felt the chains break again, not the iron ones that had already fallen, but the heavier ones inside her spirit. The chains of shame, of worthlessness, of silence. But the night was not safe. From the corner of the street, a shadow moved. Two figures stood under a broken lamp, their eyes glinting in the dark. They were debt watchers, thugs hired to track slaves even after auctions. Their laughter was low, cruel. The girl's stomach dropped. She gripped the cloak tightly, terror flashing in her eyes. "They followed us," she whispered. The human turned his head slightly, his body shifted, placing himself between her and the figures. His stance was calm, unshaken. He did not reach for a weapon, though a small blade hung at his belt. He only spoke, his voice like steel. "You will not take her." The figures laughed, mocking a human protecting a debt slave. One spat, "You'll die in the gutter for this." The other hissed. The girl's breath came fast. She was ready to run, ready to be dragged back, but the human did not move. His silence was heavier than their threats. His eyes burned with something. Neither of the thugs could laugh at conviction. For the first time, the watchers hesitated. Their laughter faltered. They muttered curses and stepped back into the shadows. Disappearing into the night, the girl stared in disbelief. Her knees weakened. She whispered, They left." The human nodded once, his voice steady. "Chains hold only if you believe in them." Her tears fell freely now. She had been broken by debt and shame. But in this single night, the human had done what she thought impossible. He had not only removed her chains, he had given her the first breath of freedom. And as they walked deeper into the dark streets, she realized something frightening and beautiful. She was no longer walking alone. The city at night was a maze of narrow alleys, broken lamps, and shadows that seemed alive. The human guided the girl through the twisting paths, his steps steady, his eyes scanning every corner. The girl kept close to him, her cloak tight around her, her heart racing. Behind them, faint echoes of voices rose, harsh and angry. The debt watchers had not given up. Their footsteps followed like wolves, hunting in the dark. The girl's breath came quick, fear burning in her chest. She whispered, her voice shaking, "They are still coming." The human did not answer right away. His silence was heavy but calm. He glanced once over his shoulder, then said quietly, "Stay close. Do not fall behind." The streets grew darker as they moved away from the market. Trash littered the ground, and strange eyes peered from broken windows. The night smelled of smoke, rot, and danger. Every sound made the girl flinch. The scrape of a boot, the clang of distant metal, the hiss of wind through cracked walls. She wanted to ask where he was taking her, but her voice failed. All she could hear were the footsteps behind them. Louder now, closer. The watchers were not alone anymore. Others had joined them, angry bidders, furious merchants. All cheated of their chance to claim her. The human suddenly turned down a narrow alley, the walls so tight she could touch both sides. His hand brushed the brick as he moved, guiding himself like he had walked this path before. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but his arm steadied her, strong and sure, from behind. A cruel voice called, "Human, give her back, and maybe we will let you live." The girl froze, terror gripping her. She looked up at the human, waiting for him to falter, but he did not even turn his head. His steps never slowed. The alley opened into a wider street, lit by the red glow of broken lanterns. Figures appeared from both sides, shadows with sharp blades and sharper smiles. The hunters had cornered them. The girl's knees weakened. Her body shook. She whispered, "It's over." Her voice was filled with despair. But the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the crowd. His shoulders squared, his stance steady. His hand rested on the small blade at his belt, but he did not draw it. His eyes burned like fire in the night. The crowd laughed, mocking, "One human against all of us." A bidder sneered, "He must be mad." Another jeered. But there was no madness in his face, only unshaken resolve. The girl watched in awe. Her fear mixed with something new, something she had never felt before. Trust. The human finally spoke. His voice quiet yet cutting through the noise. You will not touch her again. The hunters hesitated. Their laughter broke for a moment. There was something in his tone that unsettled them. Something that did not belong to a poor wanderer. It was the voice of someone who had faced worse and survived. One of the men stepped forward, waving a blade. She is dead property, he spat. You cannot protect her forever. The human's eyes narrowed. His voice did not rise. But his words carried weight. Chains are lies. Debt is poison. She belongs to no one. The girl's heart pounded. His words wrapped around her like armor. The crowd grew restless. Some stepped forward, ready to strike. But at that moment, a sound cut through the street. The distant wail of sirens, the patrol of city enforcers. The hunters cursed under their breath, unwilling to be caught in the act. One by one, they slipped back into the shadows, their threats echoing in the dark. The human stood still until the last figure vanished. Only then did he lower his shoulders. He turned to the girl, his face calm again. We must move, he said. The girl could barely breathe. Her body trembled. With relief and fear, she whispered, Why? Why risk all this for me? He looked at her, his eyes steady, because no one else would. Her chest ached. Her eyes burned with tears. In her world, no one had ever chosen her. No one had ever stood for her. Yet this human did, without asking. Anything in return, they walked again, deeper into the city, leaving the danger behind. The sirens faded, and the night grew quiet. At last, they reached an old shelter. Hidden beneath the ruins of a collapsed building, the human pushed open the door, guiding her inside. The air was dusty but warm. A small fire flickered in the corner. Casting gentle light on the walls, it was not much, but to the girl, it felt like the first safe place in years. She sat near the fire, her cloak wrapped tight, her eyes followed. The human, as he set his satchel down, his movements were simple, steady. Like someone used to surviving in silence. The girl touched her wrists, the cloth still wrapped around her wounds. She whispered to herself, barely audible, Maybe the chains are truly gone. The human looked at her from across the fire, his voice low but firm. You are not broken. They only wanted you to believe that. Her tears fell again, but this time they did not feel like shame, they felt like release. The night was not yet safe, but for the first time she felt the weight of hope. The shelter was quiet. The crackle of the small fire, the only sound. The flames painted the walls in shifting orange light. The girl sat close to the warmth, her silver skin glowing faintly, her eyes lowered but restless. She pulled the cloak tight around her, afraid that even this little safety could vanish in a moment. The human sat across from her, silent as always. He pulled a few small items from his satchel, dried food wrapped in cloth, a small flask of water. His hands moved with steady rhythm, each motion careful and calm. He broke the food in half and held it out to her. For a moment, she did not move. Her hands shook. Fear and habit holding her back in the market. Food had always been thrown at her like scraps, never given with care. Take it, the human said quietly. His voice carried no command, no demand, only simple offering. Her chest tightened, slowly. She reached forward, her fingers brushing against his as she took the bread. It was soft, warm from being near the fire. She brought it to her lips and bit. The taste was plain, but to her it felt like the sweetest thing she had eaten in years. Tears stung her eyes as she swallowed. She tried to hide it, but her voice broke. No one has ever given me food like this. The human looked at her, his face unreadable, but his eyes steady. You deserve more than scraps, he said, her throat closed. She wanted to believe him, but doubt still clung to her heart like chains. She stared. Into the fire, its light flickering across her face. And slowly, words spilled from her. They forced the debt on my family. She whispered, "It was never ours, never fair. But when they came, they took me first. They said I was payment." They laughed as my mother cried. My father begged, but it was no use. They dragged me away. Her voice shook. Her tears glistening in the firelight. I worked. I begged. I tried to pay. But every day they added more. Every mistake, every breath became another coin I could never repay. And when the debt grew too heavy, they brought me to the stage, her. Words broke. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling. The human listened in silence. His gaze did not wander, he did not interrupt, he did not turn away from her pain. He simply let her speak. When her sobs quieted, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. Debt is a chain made by greedy hands. They never meant for you to escape. That is why I cut it. She lowered her hands slowly. Her eyes red, "But they will come again," she whispered. "They always do. They will take me back. They will punish me for running. They will punish you for helping me." The human leaned closer, the firelight catching the edge of his face. His voice was steady, unshaken. "Let them try," her breath caught. His words were not shouted, but they carried weight. A strength that made her believe for a moment that he truly could stand against them. She stared at him across the fire. Trying to understand? Why? She asked, her voice trembling. "Why me? I am nothing, just a girl with chains, broken and worthless." The human's eyes hardened. His reply came sharp and clear. "You are not worthless. You are alive. That is enough to fight for." Her tears fell again, but this time they were different. They did not burn with shame. They felt lighter, as if washing away some of the weight she had carried for so long. For a while, silence filled the shelter again. Only the crackle of the fire between them. The girl sat with her knees drawn close, her eyes fixed on the flames. She felt warmth, not just from the fire, but from his presence, steady and unshaken. But outside, danger still lurked. The night was not empty. In the distance, faint echoes of boots on stone reached their ears. Enforcers or hunters searching. The girl's body tensed. She looked to the human. Fear rising again. "They are coming," she whispered. The human reached for a small pouch at his side. He pulled out a handful of black dust and threw it over the fire. The flames dimmed, shrinking to embers. Shadows swallowed the shelter. "Stay." "Quiet," he murmured. Her heart pounded in the dark. The footsteps grew closer. Rough voices passing outside the broken walls. She held her breath, her hands gripping the cloak so tightly her knuckles turned white. One of the voices stopped, just beyond the door. The sound of heavy boots shifted on the stone. The girl's body froze, every muscle locked in terror. The human placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His grip was strong, grounding. His eyes glinted in the faint ember light, calm, unafraid. After what felt like endless minutes, the voices drifted away, the boots fading into the distance. Silence returned, heavy and deep. The girl released the breath she had been holding. Her body shaking, she looked at the human with wide eyes. "They almost found us," she whispered. The human nodded once, calm as ever, but they didn't. He said. She stared at him, and for the first time, she felt the faint spark of belief. Maybe he truly could protect her. Maybe this night could become something more than running. Maybe it could become freedom. The fire crackled back to life as he fed it with a small stick. The glow warmed the shelter again, and as the girl sat there, wrapped in the cloak, her wounds healing, her heart trembling, she realized something she had not felt in years. She was safe, at least for now. The shelter's fire had burned low. Glowing faintly in the corner, the girl sat near the warmth, her head resting against the wall, her eyes heavy but unable to close. Sleep felt dangerous, every shadow outside. Felt alive, the human sat opposite her, quiet and still. His eyes watched the door, his body calm as stone. He had not spoken for a long time, but his presence filled the room, strong and steady. Then came the sound, the boots, the heavy steps of many feet pounding the stone outside. Voices rose in the dark, sharp and cruel. "They are here," the girl whispered, her voice shaking, her body tensed, her heart hammering in her chest. The human stood slowly, his movements quiet but firm. He placed one hand on the hilt of his blade, the other resting against the wall as if steadying himself. His face did not change, his eyes burned with calm fire. The door shuddered with a loud crash. Dust fell from the frame. The girl flinched, her hands gripping the cloak tightly around her. "Open it." A voice shouted outside. "The human cannot hide her forever." The door slammed again, this time cracking at the edges. Then with a final kick, it burst inward, splintering. The enforcers stepped inside, their armor glinting in the firelight, blades and shocksticks in hand. The leader, a tall alien with jagged scars across his face, sneered as his eyes landed on the girl. "There you are, debt slave," he spat. "Did you think a filthy human could protect you?" The girl's body shook. She pressed herself against the wall, shame and terror flooding her heart. She could not run, she could not fight. But the human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the enforcers, his stance wide, his shoulders straight, his voice steady, cutting through the noise. "She is not yours," he said. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. The enforcers stared at him, then erupted in cruel laughter. "Not ours." The leader jeered. "She is debt property. She was sold, she will serve, and you, human you, will die for stealing her." The human's eyes narrowed. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "Chains are made by cowards. You will not take her back." The girl stared at him in disbelief. No one had ever spoken like that. Not for her, not against the enforcers. The leader snarled, raising his shockstick. "Kill him. Leave the girl alive. She still owes." The enforcers surged forward, blades flashing in the dim firelight. The human moved with sudden force. His blade came free in a single motion, swift and precise. He struck the first attacker's weapon aside, his body twisting with practiced strength. The clash rang through the shelter. The girl gasped, watching in terror and awe. The human was outnumbered, but he did not falter. Every strike he made was sharp, controlled. His movements were not wild, but measured like a man who had fought many times before. One enforcer lunged, but the human sidestepped, his blade cutting through the air. Another swung at him, but he blocked with his arm, countering with a strike that sent the attacker stumbling back. The leader roared, pushing through his men, his scarred face twisted in rage. He swung his shockstick at the human with brutal force. The air crackled with energy. The human caught the strike on his blade, sparks bursting in the dark. The clash shook the room. The girl's heart stopped. The leader pressed forward, snarling, "You cannot win, human." But the human's eyes burned like fire. His voice was steady, each word sharp. "I already have. I chose to stand. That is enough." With a sudden surge, he twisted, forcing the leader back. The shockstick slipped from the alien's grip, clattering to the floor. The human kicked it aside, his blade at the leader's throat in one swift motion. The shelter fell silent. The other enforcers froze, their weapons lowered. The human's voice cut through the silence, low and sharp. "Leave. Tell your masters she is free. If you come again, you will not walk away." The leader's eyes burned with hate, but he could not move. The steel at his throat told him the truth. With a growl, he raised his hands and stepped back, signaling his men to retreat. Slowly, one by one, they left, their footsteps fading into the night. Their threats echoed behind them, but they did not turn back. The human lowered his blade, his breath steady. He turned toward the girl, his face calm again, as if the fight had not shaken him. The girl's body trembled. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "You stood against them." The human nodded once, his voice quiet but firm. "I told you. They will not take you back." Her tears fell freely. She covered her mouth with her hands, unable to speak. For the first time in years, she felt more than survival. She felt protected. She felt seen. The fire crackled softly in the silence. Its light warmed the room, but the true warmth was in her heart. A warmth she thought she would never feel again. And as she looked at the human, standing strong even against an army, she realized something that terrified her and comforted her all at once. He was not just protecting her body, he was giving her back her soul. The night grew quiet again after the enforcers fled. The shelter still smelled of smoke and steel. The fire's soft crackle filling the silence. The girl sat trembling near the wall, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. Her heart still pounded as if the fight had not ended. The human stood in the center of the room, his blade lowered, his breathing steady. He looked as if nothing had shaken him, but his eyes burned with a quiet fire. He sheathed his weapon slowly, the sound of steel sliding against leather echoing in the stillness. The girl could not speak at first. Her throat was tight, her tears fresh. She whispered, almost afraid to break the silence, They are gone." The human nodded once, his voice calm. For now, her body shook. She lowered her face into her hands, sobbing quietly. Her voice broke. "All my life, they told me I was worthless. That debt was my only name. I thought I would die in chains. I thought no one would ever stand for me." The human walked closer, his steps slow. He crouched down so his eyes met hers. His voice was steady. "Carrying weight, they lied. You are not chains. You are not shame. You are alive. That is your strength." Her tears spilled harder. His words broke through the walls she had built around her heart. For the first time, she let herself believe. Then the firelight flickered across her silver skin. Glowing against the tears on her cheeks, she lifted her head, her eyes red but shining. She whispered, "Why me? Why risk everything for me?" The human's expression softened, his eyes steady as stone. His answer came simple, "Because no one deserves to be broken. And because I could not walk away." Her chest tightened. She had no words, only tears. Only the feeling of something she had never known being chosen. Being valued outside. The first light of dawn crept across the ruined streets, pale gold spilling over the cracked walls and broken stones. The darkness of night began to fade. The girl rose slowly, her legs weak but steady. She stepped toward the broken doorway and looked out. The horizon glowed with rising light. The city was still dangerous. The debt lords still ruled. But the sky itself seemed different, freer. The human joined her side, his presence strong and quiet. Together they stood at the edge of the shelter, watching the dawn break. The girl spoke softly, her voice trembling but filled with new strength. "You gave me freedom in one night," she whispered. "But you gave me something greater too." He turned his head slightly, waiting. She looked at him, her eyes shining. "You gave me back myself." The words hung in the air, powerful and true. The human said nothing, but the faintest curve touched his lips. Not quite a smile, but enough. The city behind them stirred awake, merchants shouting in distant streets, guards marching their patrols. But for the girl, the noise no longer held power. For the first time in years, she was not chained by shame. She was not property. She was not debt. She was free. The human stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "The road ahead will not be easy. They will come again. They will try to chain you with fear. But you are stronger than their lies. The girl's eyes filled with fresh tears. But this time, they were not tears of despair. They were tears of strength. She nodded firmly. I will not bow again. She turned to him, her voice quiet but steady. Where will we go? He looked toward the horizon, the golden light spreading wider. His eyes were calm. Somewhere they cannot reach, somewhere the chains do not matter. Her heart swelled with hope. She stepped closer, the cloak brushing against his arm. For the first time, she did not feel small beside him. She felt equal, walking toward the same dawn. The fire behind them burned low, but they did not look back. Their steps carried them forward. Away from the shelter, away from the night of fear. The sun rose higher, warming their faces. The city's shadows stretched long. But the light pushed them back. The girl breathed deeply, the air cool and sharp, but no longer filled with the stench of chains. She whispered to herself, as if testing the words for the first time, I am free. The human glanced at her, his voice steady. Yes, they walked on. Side by side, their figures small against the rising light. But their path wide open. For her, the night of shame had ended. For him, it had been only a choice to stand. But together, it had become something greater. The dawn of freedom.